Hi, my name is James Shenton, and this is my oral presentation for Positions and Practice. I will discuss my past photographic work, my current, and where I'd like to go moving forward, and the motivations behind my work. My job is a teacher in creative media production and have been for 7 years. Previously, I worked in retail for about 7 years also. When in retail, I was basically miserable. I had a wonderful partner who actually wanted to live with me, and after a month of living together, she said to me, "You either leave that job or I'm moving out." So I handed in my notice 2 days later. Fast forward 8 years later, and I am now a full-time teacher of creative media production at an FE college in Manchester. But in work, I felt a bit of a fraud. I felt I wasn't doing anything creative myself, and I felt a little bit hypocritical considering the subject that I taught. I needed a creative outlet to help me in my professional life, but also in my personal life. Living on the edge of the Peak District, I spent a lot of time with my family exploring the area we live in, and through landscape photography, I got this creative outlet I was so desperately seeking. I feel a lot of my work is inspired by the cinematography of Roger Deakins in the films of the Coen brothers. I love the sweeping, ominous, moody landscapes that feature heavily in their work. I tried to connote these themes of danger, isolation, loneliness and oppression in my landscape work, whether it is through the use of underexposure, suffocating skylines, or the vastness of space, reflecting the genre and the mythical narrative themes, like the hero journey and Christ figures that are present in films like Fargo, O Brother Where Art Thou, and No Country for Old Men. The landscape is a journey fraught with danger and a trial to overcome for the hero. My main motivation when taking a picture is to capture the atmosphere and make the audience, whoever they may be, picture themselves in the space I have captured, and the stories that may lie within, the connection between landscape, adventure, and narrative. This summer I travelled around Europe with my family. I was eager to document the places I had visited through street photography, something different from my usual landscape work. I didn't have a clear vision in mind, but I saw it as a way of testing my photographic ability, skill and creativity in a different style to my normal landscape work. I was documenting the crowds of tourists around the cities I visited, places like Lille, Verona, Venice and Bruges. This wasn't clear and intentional in my mind. It was only when I looked at the pictures afterwards that I realised I was documenting the way that people experience a city through tourism, and this really triggered my imagination. I became intrigued by the crowds of people moving around the city and how they experience the sights that are to be seen, taking shots of themselves in front of famous buildings or on sandy beaches to show everybody back home. Berger's commentary on advertising could easily apply to this documenting tourist experience. He says about publicity that it persuades us of such a transformation by showing us people who have apparently been transformed and are as a result enviable. In the hope of transitioning their lives or the way people see their lives through these holiday snaps that they spread on the internet through things like Instagram and Facebook, this act of documenting places has become a hobby or a pastime within itself, separate from actual tourism and the experience, but just connected by place. Going to places just to take pictures in the desire to be envied by an audience. Although Berger talked about this idea of being envied in terms of advertising, I believe the motivations are the same when tourists share their holiday pictures, how they present themselves to an audience, and the decisions they make in this representation of the self. I was happy with the results of my summer European adventure and excited by the process, and ironically, I probably wasn't experienced in these places myself, constantly hid behind a camera, 50 yards away from my family. It was only after reading Susan Sontag on photography 2 months later in preparation for this MA course that I really got interested in this concept about how people experience places through tourism. Sontag discusses the act of taking pictures to document experience. It seems positively unnatural to travel for pleasure without taking a camera along. Photographs will offer indisputable evidence that the trip was made, that the programme was carried out, and that fun was had. This is what I had just done and witnessed hundreds of others doing themselves. That they were going to these places, they were taking pictures in front of these famous places to document that they were there, that there's evidence they were there, and that they were having fun. When I enrolled on the MA, I wanted to explore this further with my research project. How tourists move around the city or resort, documenting the fun they are having to provide evidence of their experience for others or for themselves. I realised I was doing the same thing with my own experience, but I found taking pictures of others much more interesting than taking pictures of myself. Whether this was queuing for a boat tour or taking a selfie on a famous bridge, or simply looking exasperated. The initial development of my research project, I received the advice when shooting to stay around where I live. Originally, I thought about the juxtaposition between European cities and British seaside towns, as I've done a lot of shooting in European cities over the summer and I plan to go back next summer. After some consultation with others, I decided to stick to Portrait of British Seaside Town. I will choose around 5 locations and revisit them over the course of the year, in and out of season. I feel this approach will result in more interesting and meaningful work than to cover more places, because I think this might confuse and dilute the meaning. Seeing these places out of season compared to when in season and how they are experienced by visitors, the juxtaposition of the seasonal nature of these places, I'm hoping will be key to the work. I like to take these candid, unguarded and non-posed shots of people in these places. I find them more interesting and feel I tell more of a story about their experience. Barthes discusses this when talking about himself being photographed. He says, "I have been photographed and knew it. Now, once I feel myself being observed by the lens, everything changes. I constitute myself in the process of posing. I instantly make another body for myself, and I transform myself and advance into an image." Because I am hoping to capture experience in the moment, I prefer this documentary style approach. I have asked people to take their picture recently, and I have been caught covertly taking pictures in the past, and you can see this moment where people transform themselves. For me, the image changes entirely. I like that moment when people think there is no one watching, and also those moments when I review the shots when people are looking right down the camera. The moment they realise they have had their picture taken, their guard is up, and as Barthes says, they have been transformed. The reputation of the many places that I plan to shoot has not been the best in recent years due to their various socio-economic problems. I'm not scared of highlighting this in my work and portraying these issues that seaside towns have, but I also want to show the joy and the fun and how they are bringing people together. I hope my work will explore themes of culture and identity and what it is to be Northern and British, especially in the recent negative connotations being British has following Brexit. I, for one, have never felt very patriotic, and I may uncover my own Britishness. When researching, I have looked at the work of Simon Roberts. His wee English resonates with me with that combination of people and landscapes in his tableau style. Roberts' work influenced by the themes that Martin Parr covers, especially the commentary on British cultural pastimes and traditions, like visiting places as a family and the reasons to do so. I like the way Roberts covers people from a distance, incorporating figures at leisure on the sweeping landscapes of a very green and pleasant England, compared to Parr's more in-your-face, unsettling, garish use of colour, close-up and often unsettling style that triggers a sense of uncomfortable voyeurism in the viewer. I feel my current work in progress has landed somewhere between these two ways of documenting people and tourism in terms of distance to subject. I have kept a distance from subjects, but not as far as Roberts does, but not as close as Parr gets in his earlier work like Benidorm and Think of England. I have kept an almost semi-distance while trying to engage a level of intrigue from the viewer. I like this way of shooting. I do, however, need to speak to people and get to know them and their stories of these places they visit. I am interested in the reasons behind tourism, experience and documenting places. Parr states on tourism, "Tourism is the biggest industry in the world. Only oil comes anywhere close, and a lot of that is used in the tourist industry anyway. We queue up, we sun ourselves and spend cash on often quite useless souvenirs. We take photos of ourselves in front of the visited site. This proves we have been there and are a part of the world as we know it. Visiting sites in a modern form of pilgrimage and resulting photos the ultimate prize." Although I find some of his work, like Death by Selfie, a bit contrived and condescending, his earlier work is the benchmark for the themes I am exploring, like experience, identity, British culture and family pilgrimage, especially Last Resort, having documented New Brighton myself in my work in progress, a place I used to go as a child in the 80s. Growing up in the north of England, visiting places like Blackpool, Southport and Rhyl almost becomes a rites of passage for any young person. For me, the coast and the seaside towns bear the heavy weight of nostalgia. My own trips there with my family and fun times we had were not an everyday occurrence or even a reflection of our own reality at home. I do look back on these trips with great fondness and how we came together as a family despite my parents going through a divorce. When we went on holiday, usually to Anglesey, we put this aside. Me and my siblings played, and as you can see, the trip was made, the programme was carried out and fun was had. I recently returned to Anglesey after 25 years and the memory of my mother was present everywhere that I went, and I think this is why the seaside holds a certain pathos for me. And this is one of my main motivations for this project. Although I feel I've found my starting point, I have no real idea where it may end up. In the short space of 6 weeks, my initial idea has already evolved via going out shooting and speaking to other photographers and reading about photography. I'm already having creative crises that I've never experienced before and keep second guessing where I want to lead the project. But I think the key is to have a narrower focus to have a bigger impact. I'm going to try and enjoy the journey as well as the destinations. Thank you for listening.